I'm sure a lot of you guys are here for the title of the video, which is something to do with David Silverman. A lot of you guys may not know Silverman, so let me just kind of give you a basic rundown on who the guy is. You can see a picture of him here on my screen. He was the president of American Atheists for like a really, really long time. And he was really, really good at fundraising. He's kind of a inflammatory, I guess is the word. He's an inflammatory dude. He would put up billboards around the country that would say things like, "You know it's a lie, we know it's a lie, just leave," or something like that about religion. And it caught people's attention. It got him on the news. It got him coverage. It got American Atheists donors. He was actually really, really good for the funding of American Atheists. He was really good at funding. But a while back, there were some allegations that were made against him, some sexual impropriety, and it was covered in BuzzFeed. It was basically an expose. And they didn't really name who the person was. It turns out it was one of the board members, one of American Atheist board members' wives. And she came out and she said that he raped her. It was a really, really big deal. He got fired from American Atheists, not necessarily for that reason. They didn't list a reason, but it was around that same time. And the board member's wife isn't the only one who made that claim. There were others who claimed that he was abusing his power. Here's something that I feel I need to say about it up front. I have an issue with people in a position of authority or a position of power engaging in sexual relations with people who are not of the same level of power. So Silverman would go to conferences as the president of American Atheists, and he would sleep with people he met at the conferences, just regular attendees. That's wrong. There's nothing okay about that. They look up to you. They respect you. They do not view you as equals in terms of power. It is absolutely wrong to sleep with even one person at a conference, period, that you're speaking at or that you're the president of or any of that. It's wrong. Bottom line, he should have been fired for that alone. That's my opinion on it. And eventually he was fired. But like I said, they didn't list a reason. So it's been like a year or 2 years or something like that. This news just broke that he was rehired by a new company. So I figured we'd go through this article. It's by Hemant Mehta. A lot of you guys know that I actually read from Hemant Mehta's blog a lot. You guys should definitely support Hemant Mehta. He's awesome. So let's read this article by Hemant Mehta and see what Hemant has to say about it. I respect the hell out of him. So we'll see what he has to say. David Silverman, the former head of American Atheists, will become the next executive director of Atheist Alliance International, AAI, once again giving him a formal position within a movement from which he was unceremoniously kicked out last year. The announcement was made this morning, and while the organizations may seem identical to outsiders or anyone who's watched South Park, there's a world of difference between them. In case you need a refresher, Silverman had been president of American Atheists since 2010 and an employee of the organization since 2004. For a few years, when atheist billboards were making headlines across the country, Silverman made several appearances on Fox News, one of which was forever immortalized in a meme. In 2012, he was the public face of the Reason Rally in Washington, D.C. I actually went to the Reason Rally in 2016. It was awesome. I absolutely loved going to the Reason Rally. It's kind of a shame they're not doing it again, but anyway, which drew tens of thousands of people. He's also the author of the book Fighting God, an Atheist Manifesto for a Religious World, in which he made his case for in-your-face firebrand activism. In April of 2018, Silverman was temporarily suspended from his position, only to be fired days later. Initially, the concern was a financial conflict of interest between his personal work, the book, and his public work for AA. That's why he was initially suspended by the AA board of directors as they investigated the matter. However, around the same time, the board learned of sexual misconduct allegations against Silverman, documented most extensively in an article for BuzzFeed by reporter Peter Aldu, I guess. BuzzFeed is notoriously untrustworthy. I know that and I understand that, but this is not the only allegation. This allegation was actually made by a board member's wife of American Atheists, come to find out. That came out fairly recently. That's a really big deal. The dude was known to sleep with people at conferences. Anyway, it says there were two major allegations. One involved a student Silverman met at a conference who said he used his position of power to pressure her into having sex with him. She had asked him for a job, which he said he couldn't provide, and said in her allegation that she was intoxicated during their encounter. I don't know if she was or not. Doesn't even matter to me, honestly. Should not have been sleeping with her, period. Intoxicated or not. BuzzFeed also quoted another woman who said that in 2015, Silverman suddenly forced himself on her at American Atheists' annual convention during an after-party. That meeting left bruises on her body. Silverman admitted to the sex, but said both encounters were entirely consensual. He did not think the student was drunk. He may have violated good decision-making, but he maintained that he wasn't some sort of predator. I don't give a shit if you're a predator or not. That decision-making is enough to ostracize you from the community, as far as I'm concerned. Or at least get you out of a position of power. You're obviously abusing your power right now. That is not acceptable. Seriously, who gives a shit if you're a predator or not? That's not what I'm concerned about. You're abusing your power. That's wrong. As for the financial issue, Silverman now quotes an AA board member on his personal website who says David did not embezzle from American Atheists. That, however, doesn't address the conflict of interest issue. American Atheists hasn't said anything publicly about the results of their investigation. Nick Fish, AA's current leader and the person who eventually replaced Silverman, told me in a statement, "Our board of directors fully stands behind its decision to terminate Mr. Silverman's employment. After reviewing the allegations and materials presented, the board concluded that there were violations of American Atheists' policies that warranted termination. The results of a review completed by an outside investigator confirmed that decision." In recent weeks, Silverman's been trying to stage something of a comeback. After more than a year away from the spotlight, he's been doing interviews with just about any YouTuber willing to speak with him, including some who regularly trash feminism and condemn social justice warriors. That would be Sargon. He went on Sargon of Akkad's YouTube channel. I've talked about Sargon on the channel before. I've talked about how, he's an anti-SJW, quote-unquote, as some people would say, and how he's extremely toxic. He's a 9/11 truther. He's a climate change denialist, climate change skeptic, quote-unquote, as he would say. He's an anti-feminist. There are actual, real issues that feminism addresses that need to be addressed. Even if it's not in the US, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, there are zero issues that need to be addressed by feminism in the US, which I don't agree with, but I'm granting it for the sake of argument. Even if that is the case, even if there are no issues in the US feminism needs to address, there are issues feminism needs to address in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, in Qatar, in Iraq, in Iran, Syria, all of those places. So how can you call yourself an anti-feminist? Give me a fucking break. There are some things that are actually necessary that feminism does for people. There are people walking around with scarves over their heads. There are people whose faces you will never see because they're oppressed by a patriarchy, by Saudi Arabia, by other countries. They need feminism, and you're sitting here demonizing it, calling it a mental disease. Give me a fucking break. And Silverman's going on this dude's channel. Still calls himself a feminist, though. Silverman does. Yeah, I bet. I bet you're a fucking feminist. Going on with the article. After more than a year away from the spotlight, he's been doing interviews with just about any YouTuber willing to speak with him, including some who regularly trash feminism and condemn social justice warriors. That would be Sargon, as I said. If he's trying to re-endear himself to progressives, it's not exactly a wise strategy. The only reason I suspect that Silverman went on Sargon's channel is because people like Sargon are the only ones who would have him on, honestly. Everybody in the community knows Silverman is a piece of work, and the only people willing to work with him are fellow pieces of shit, unfortunately. I just want to clarify here real quick, though. There are some people who had Silverman on who are not necessarily pieces of shit. Armin Navabi, I don't think he's a bad guy, actually. I think he wants to have discourse, discussion. I think this is the wrong person to have it with, but, you know, that's your thing. You want to talk to him, then you can talk to him. But there are some people he's been on, or some people's channels he's been on who are real pieces of shit. Silverman, in those interviews, portrays himself as a victim of an outrage mob. He rationalizes his actions. He trashes what various atheist organizations are doing or not doing, suggesting that someone like him, a firebrand, is needed to fight religion. While he apologizes for being unethical and immoral, he insists he's not a criminal or the guy depicted in the allegations or in BuzzFeed. To that end, he's filed a defamation lawsuit against the women who accused him of misconduct, BuzzFeed and American Atheists. It says here, he trashes what various theist organizations are doing, suggesting that someone like him, a firebrand, is needed to fight religion. While he apologizes for being unethical and immoral, he insists he's not a criminal. I don't give a shit if you're a criminal. That's completely irrelevant. You were the president of American Atheists. You cannot be unethical and immoral. I don't fucking care. You have a responsibility to be morally upright. You are in the public eye. People look up to you, David. People look up to you. You cannot be unethical and immoral. They model their behavior after your behavior. You're not taking this seriously enough. You should not be a public figure. You're abusing your power. It says, in addition, he's rebranded himself as a firebrand for good. He spoke to the Washington Post to tell his side of the story. He also began selling insurance to make money. Oh, that sucks for him. We don't need firebrands in this movement. I'm sorry. We need moderate, non-extremist people. We need people who aren't going to burn everybody to the ground around them, including themselves. We need voices of reason. That's what this is all about. We're atheists. We should be voices of reason, not fucking extremists. We left extremism behind. Do you remember that? Why are you advertising and taking pride in the fact that you're a firebrand? I know it gets you donations. I don't care. Sometimes there are things that are more important than money. And you know what those things are? It's morals and ethics. That's what's more important than money. I don't want you in this movement, David. I don't want you to represent me in any way. That just pisses me off. That whole situation really just pisses me off. Let's move on to another subject. If you like what I do and you want to make sure I can continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, you can support me on Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. I'm trying to make a shirt design for every cult I've covered. I haven't gotten every one, but I'm working on it. So check it out and see if your cult is up there. Second, you can support me by checking out my game shop. I sell controller, cartridge, and game box stands for every system from the original Nintendo and Sega Game Gear to the Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. So give that a look too. And And finally, if you want to support me in some way other than monetarily, you can check out my other YouTube channels. I have a retro game channel where I answer questions like, why does Shy Guy have a mask? And why are CRT TVs the best way to play retro games? I also have the podcast where I talk about stuff I don't feel I can say on a monetized channel. And finally, I have my main channel where I talk about cults. I wish I didn't have to worry about dancing around subjects carefully in the first place, but I chose to do this as a full-time job, so unfortunately, I rely on YouTube's AdSense and on the support of patrons to continue doing the work I do. Anyways, check me out in all those places if you haven't already. Thanks for listening, guys.